Good morning, everyone. There was once a young girl who grew up in a small town, surrounded by narrow streets, big dreams, and an even bigger imagination. She wasn't born into fame or privilege. She wasn't handed a roadmap. What she had was something far more powerful, the belief that the world was hers to explore. She walked into rooms where she didn't look like anyone else. She spoke in ways that weren't always understood. She heard no more times than she could count. Every no became fuel. Every closed door was just a detour to something better. She made mistakes, some public, some private, but she owned every single one of them. And that's the thing, she never apologized for being too ambitious, too loud, too curious, because those were her superpowers. You don't need to come from a big city to dream big. You don't need connections to create a future. What you need is courage, the kind that says, why not me? Being a world citizen isn't about living everywhere. It's about learning from everywhere. It's about understanding that our differences make us powerful and our stories make us unforgettable. So to every young girl sitting in a quiet corner of a small town, this is your reminder. You don't have to shrink to fit in. Expand, shine, make space. The world is waiting for your voice. Thank you. We often grow up believing that greatness has a zip code, that unless you're born into wealth, raised in a capital city, or surrounded by opportunity, your dreams should have a ceiling. But the truth is, your origin does not define your destination. The streets you walk in your childhood may be narrow, but your dreams don't have to be. Coming from a small town or even a modest background is not a limitation. It's actually your strength. It teaches you how to hustle without shortcuts, to fight without excuses, and to value every inch of progress. You're raised in a place where dreams feel bigger than the sky. You develop a different kind of hunger. You learn to imagine things you've never seen, to picture stages you've never stood on, and to believe in a future no one around you is talking about. That kind of internal fire, the one that isn't lit by your environment, by your vision, is powerful. It becomes your fuel when everything outside of you says, stay where you are. There's a beauty in small beginnings because they sharpen your instincts. You notice every little opportunity. You're not afraid to get your hands dirty, and you learn to build from scratch. You grow up watching your parents stretch every rupee or dollar. You see how resourcefulness beats resources. You begin to understand that while some people are born into rooms of power, others can build the door, knock, and walk through it anyway. The road might be longer, but the journey makes you fierce. And then there's this misconception that if you come from somewhere quiet, your voice will always stay quiet. Not true. Your voice becomes your weapon, your accent, your story, your scars. They all become part of your personal brand. It might take time to find your confidence, but once you do, it's unshakable because it's earned, not inherited. Every time someone underestimates you, giving you more power to prove them wrong. So no, you don't need a glamorous address or elite connections to dream big. You just need one belief that your story matters. Because when you carry your roots with pride and your ambition with grit, there is no map that can contain you. Humble beginnings aren't limitations. They are the training grounds for extraordinary lives. Rejection is one of the most misunderstood parts of success. We're taught to fear it, as if being told no means we're not good enough, not ready, not deserving. But here's a truth that too many people learn late. Rejection is never the end of your story. It's a sharp turn. Yes, it stings. Sometimes it breaks you for a moment. It also points you toward a different path, a path you may not have considered if things had gone your way. Rejection doesn't stop your journey. It edits it. You put yourself out there, whether it's for a job, a stage, a dream. You're not just risking failure, you're inviting growth. No, you hear is a moment of clarity. It reveals what you're not meant for right now and where you still need to grow. But more importantly, clears space for a yes that actually aligns with your purpose. Sometimes what looks like a door closing is actually protection, because not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every stage is built to hold the weight of your true potential. Rejection also builds resilience. It toughens your skin in all the right places. It teaches you not to crumble when things don't go your way. You learn to stay standing when the crowd walks out, when the call doesn't come, when someone else gets the spotlight. And yet you keep showing up. That's where real strength is born, not in being accepted, but in continuing without approval. It's the type of strength that can't be bought or borrowed. It has to be earned through the moments that make you doubt yourself and still choosing to believe anyway. People often miss is that rejection is feedback, not a verdict. It's an invitation to rework, refocus, or reimagine what you're trying to do. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe your voice hasn't been sharpened yet. Maybe the world isn't ready. But that doesn't mean you're not. It means the universe is reshaping the runway you're about to take off from. And the ones who succeed aren't the ones who avoid rejection. They're the ones who use it to rise. So if you're facing rejection right now, be it in your career, your relationships, or your dreams, don't see it as a loss. See it as a signal, a whisper that says, not here, not yet. Keep going. Because the truth is, rejection doesn't take you off course. It just shows you a better one. In a world constantly trying to put people in boxes, your greatest strength is refusing to fit into one. From the way you look, speak, think, or even dream, your uniqueness is not a flaw that needs fixing. It's your signature. Too often, especially as women, we're told to adjust ourselves, to shrink our voices so they sound more agreeable, to soften our ambitions so they don't intimidate, to blend in so we don't offend. The truth is, blending in might keep you safe, but it will never make you unforgettable. When you own your uniqueness fully, loudly, and without apology, you give others permission to do the same. That's how movements start. That's how culture shifts. You stop trying to become someone else's idea of perfect and instead become a mirror for authenticity. Maybe your accent isn't polished, your skin tone isn't what the industry favors, or your ideas aren't always popular. Good, that means you're not here to replicate. You're here to rewrite the standard. People are often uncomfortable with what they don't understand. That's not your burden to carry. It's their opportunity to grow. Sets you apart is what makes you valuable, not just in your career, but in every room you walk into. Originality creates impact. And when you stop trying to be someone else, you start showing up as someone unforgettable. That's when people listen differently. That's when you become magnetic, not because you followed the rules, because you dared to break them. Even your so-called flaws are part of your power. The things you were once teased for or asked to hide, they become your edge. Curly hair, the bold opinions, the wild laughter, the fearless fashion sense, it's all a part of your story. And stories don't need to be edited to be beautiful. They need to be told honestly. Every part of you that's different is a piece of your legacy. If you erase it, you erase the very thing that could make you iconic. So instead of asking, how can I fit in? Ask, what makes me stand out? And then build your world around that, because your uniqueness isn't something to overcome. It's the exact thing that will take you where imitation never could. We live in a world that loves to celebrate perfection, but is quick to crucify mistakes. Especially if you're a woman, one misstep, one wrong choice, one vulnerable moment, and suddenly you're labeled, judged, or written off. Here's the truth that takes time and courage to accept. Making mistakes doesn't mean you've failed at life. It means you're living it boldly, imperfectly. And honestly, mistakes aren't proof that you're weak. They're proof that you're brave enough to try. There's this pressure to always get it right, to be polished, poised, perfect from day one. But growth doesn't happen in perfection. Growth happens in the mess, in the times when you said the wrong thing, trusted the wrong person, the wrong path. Those are the moments that shape you, not destroy you. Mistakes don't define who you are. They refine who you're becoming. And anyone who says they've never made one is either lying or hasn't lived fully enough to fail. The most powerful people you admire didn't arrive at success without scars. They've fallen, been criticized, made headlines for the wrong reasons, or disappeared into doubt for a while, but they came back. That's what matters. They learned, they evolved, and that's exactly what you're allowed to do. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to outgrow old versions of yourself. You're allowed to rewrite your story, even if the first few chapters didn't go as planned. In fact, mistakes often teach you things that success never could. They reveal what really matters. They introduce you to resilience. They humble you. They force you to pause, reflect, and rebuild with more intention. And once you've survived something that once embarrassed or broke you, there's a strength that settles in, a quiet, steady power that no applause can give and no judgment can take away. You stop fearing imperfection and start embracing growth. So instead of punishing yourself for your past, ask what it taught you. Who did it shape you into? What did it show you about your strength, your boundaries, your values? Because when you stop viewing mistakes as life sentences and start treating them as life lessons, you realize you're not broken. You're just becoming. For far too long, ambition, especially in women, has been misunderstood, misjudged, and mislabeled. The moment a woman says what she wants out loud, the world gets uncomfortable. She's called aggressive, difficult, too much. But ambition is not arrogance. It's not a flaw. It's not something to hide behind polite smiles or apologetic tones. Ambition is a fire, a purpose, a decision to live life on your own terms and refuse to settle for anything less than what sets your soul on fire. Why is it that when men chase their goals, it's considered strength, but when women do the same, it's called selfishness or ego? Ambition is genderless. Wanting more doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you aware of your potential. It means you've seen what you're capable of, and you're not going to pretend to be smaller just to make others comfortable. You can be kind and ambitious, gentle and unstoppable, caring and completely unwilling to play small. You don't have to apologize for having goals that scare people or even yourself. In fact, if your ambition doesn't intimidate you just a little, you're probably not dreaming big enough. You're allowed to want the top seat at the table. You're allowed to want your name on the door. You're allowed to want impact, influence, independence, or all of the above. Ambition doesn't make you any less feminine, any less human. It makes you driven, and there is nothing more attractive, more powerful than a woman who knows what she wants and moves toward it with purpose. There will always be people who try to tame your fire, who tell you to slow down, lower your voice, compromise your standards, call it advice, but it's often fear in disguise. You don't need to carry their fear. You don't need to silence your ambition for their approval. You weren't born to shrink into someone else's version of success. You were born to define your own, and that requires vision, grit, and unapologetic drive. So stop dimming your light to fit in. Stop second-guessing your worth every time you take up space. Ambition is not something to be embarrassed by. It's something to celebrate. Because ambition means you believe in yourself even when no one else does. It means you see something that hasn't happened yet and you're willing to make it real. Being a global citizen isn't about how many stamps you have in your passport or which city skyline you wake up under. It's about perspective. It's about seeing the world beyond borders, beyond languages, beyond skin color and traditions. It's a mindset that says, I may have been born in one place. I belong to many. Global citizenship begins the moment you decide to listen more, judge less, and recognize that humanity is more connected than divided. You don't have to leave your country to think globally. What you need is a curiosity that reaches further than your surroundings, a willingness to learn about people whose lives are different from yours, not to compare or criticize, but to understand. When you step into conversations with humility, when you replace assumptions with questions, that's when your world starts to expand. The most globally aware people aren't always the ones who travel the most. They're the ones who care the most about people outside their immediate bubble. The world is too complex, too rich, and too diverse for any one culture to hold all the answers. When you embrace that, your thinking becomes sharper, your creativity becomes deeper, and your impact becomes broader. You start to see that empathy is a kind of intelligence, that listening is leadership, that collaboration is more powerful than control. Being a global citizen means standing in your identity with pride while respecting someone else's with equal grace. And when you bring that mindset into your work, your relationships, and your values, you start leading in ways that transcend titles and accolades. You stop looking for what separates you from others and start building on what connects you to them. Whether you're in a meeting room, a classroom, on a digital platform, being globally minded means you're building bridges, not borders. It's about using your privilege, your platform, or even just your presence to uplift stories that aren't always heard, In a time where the loudest voices often promote fear and division, choosing global citizenship is a quiet act of rebellion. It means choosing inclusion over ignorance, understanding over indifference. And that choice doesn't require a visa, it requires vision. You don't have to live everywhere to belong everywhere. All it takes is an open mind, an open heart, courage to step into unfamiliar spaces with respect. From a young age, many of us are taught to be quiet, to not speak unless spoken to avoid confrontation, to be agreeable, to not make too much noise. And slowly that silence becomes a habit. We start censoring ourselves, not because we don't have something to say, because we're afraid of how it will be received. But here's what's often forgotten: your voice carries power. And that power doesn't grow in silence, it grows when you decide to use it. Your thoughts, your experiences, your perspective, they are uniquely yours. No one else has lived your exact story, which means no one else can tell it the way you can. When you stay silent, the world loses access to the insight only you can bring. Speaking up isn't always about shouting from a stage. It can be a quiet truth in a room full of noise. Brave no, when everyone expects a yes, or even just asking the question no one else is willing to ask. That is voice, that is leadership. There will always be moments when using your voice feels risky, when you worry about being judged, misunderstood, or dismissed. The cost of staying silent is often greater than the cost of speaking up, because silence over time becomes heavy. It becomes regret. It eats away at your confidence and makes you question your value. Every time you speak your truth, even with a shaky voice, you reclaim a piece of your power. And the more you do it, the louder and clearer that voice becomes. You don't need to sound like anyone else. Your voice doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. Whether you're speaking up for yourself, for someone else, or for a cause that matters, your voice can challenge systems, shift conversations, and spark change. And sometimes it's not about speaking for a crowd. It's about knowing that one person heard you and that was enough to make a difference. Impact doesn't always look like applause. Sometimes it looks like courage. So if the world has ever made you feel like your voice doesn't matter, that it's too bold, too raw, too honest, remember this: discomfort you're feeling isn't a sign to back down. It's a sign that what you're saying needs to be heard. Because silence may keep you safe, your voice is what sets you free. And right now, the world doesn't need more silence. It needs more truth.